Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Tai. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really cool guest today. I've actually gotten a reading from her before. I'm so excited to have her on. Her name is Cortney McMahon, and she's the owner of the Stars of the Morning Light, which is a spiritual resource platform. And thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. This is cool. I'm glad that we get to reconnect this way.
Yeah, I know it's been a couple of years, but when I thought about doing this podcast, you're one of the first people. I was like, oh, I need to reach out to her. I need to have her on. So I'm
Oh,
so
cool. Thank
glad that
you.
it worked out. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what you offer?
Well, I'm Cortney McMahon, and I am the creator, owner of Stars of the Morning Light. It's a complete spiritual resource platform, I guess you would say. As in, I'm on YouTube, Patreon. I teach twice a month on Patreon. It's a lovely community of people there. I teach in-person classes. I have online classes. I'm an Akashic Records messenger reader. However, practitioner, everybody uses a different title to that. I also do karmic timeline cleanses as a service. So I'm kind of everywhere, all sorts of things. There's also a Stars of the Morning Light meditation podcast that's more for people on the go. So they definitely get in that 10 minutes, even if it's in your car in the grocery parking lot, you're taking that 10 minutes for yourself. So I'm all encompassing. I'm also, as I point to this sign behind me, I'm the founder of New Earth Energy Market, we put on events every April in northern Georgia that are either holistic and cultural based. So that's a beautiful thing to see spring up and happen in more of the not yet there communities of the South of the United States. It's nice to see things springing and blossoming. So that's I tried summing me up in very quickly. I tried to.
You did a great job. And yeah, there's so much that you do. It's hard to just like pinpoint it down to one thing. It sounds like you're involved in a lot of different projects and resources. And then of course you also have your readings. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's amazing. And I think that we need more of those resources because I mean it's one thing to have like readers, and I know that readers are I'm one of them and we're really helpful, but we're really, until we're able to expand more into the community aspect, it's more of a one-on-one. And so what you're doing is just a little bit more broader than just the reading. And so I really love how you're branching out all these resources to those who want more, but maybe want it in a different form. Um,
Yes.
so my next question would be, how did you find this path? I mean, have you always been raised in a spiritual background, or what led you here?
Well, I was born a very gifted child, and my parents were gifted. And so I was raised, actually, my father followed the Plains Indians beliefs, so I was raised with a lot of native beliefs on my father's side. I almost said the sign of the turtle. That's where I confused my words there. And my mom was more kind of she was raised Catholic, so she ended up going more Buddhist and Druid, very witchy in her own right. So I was raised in that. And then I took some time for myself, about 5 years, that I was like a hardcore Christian and denounced any of my abilities. But I needed that because within that, I learned unconditional love when it was beautiful. And then I sprung back into who I was originally, releasing any outside influences. And what I mean by that is that because my parents were both very gifted, I was also raised in a household that strongly enforced to never use my gifts for profit. So I struggled for like 3 years to release what was very influenced on me to not accept any money for doing readings or doing whatever I was doing, which I did my whole life, except for a pocket of time. So it took about 3 years to release not just that concept of not accepting money, but also just any influences that were not in line with who I was becoming. And this was like my mid 30s. So I had some time under my belt of being able to establish what are my human core values and then kind of go through all the filters of he said, she said, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, what we're supposed to do within this interesting spiritual construct. Because there's a lot of people still in the spiritual community that use terms like that, should do this, should do that, all sorts of all over the place. And I had to find my own identity within it all and what works for me and doesn't work for me and release what needed to be. So Stars of the Morning Light didn't really come into full fruition until maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But had I been doing the work since I was young? Yes. It was a long process of a great deal of self-acceptance and a great deal of understanding what is mine and what is other people's.
Especially the paying the charging for your gifts. That is still a very almost controversial thing in the spiritual realm. I think that more people are leaning towards charging, but there's still a big collective that feel like that's wrong. And, I have a friend who, I mean, she supports me what I do, but she's a medium and she doesn't feel comfortable charging, which, I feel like it also depends on the person. Sometimes if you just don't feel called to that, then that's just not your place. But there's also, I think, just a lot of that underlying, well, you shouldn't charge for these spiritual gifts because it comes from God. And, like that idea of it shouldn't be something that you can profit from. And so I would actually really love to ask, how did you find a way to release that and find the permission slip for yourself to know that it was still okay to charge, even though the way you were raised taught you otherwise?
For a couple of years, I had a lot of people try to talk to me about, the exchange of energy. And I'll go into it, but it wasn't until a lovely older woman, Mary Jo Tarvin out of Knoxville, Tennessee, who is a channeler herself, talked to me about it. She's a wonderful friend of mine. And for some reason, even though she said everything that everybody else had told me, it somehow resonated coming from her. And I think I needed an older woman telling me so to kind of replace the mother who told me never in life since a young age to do that. So I needed that kind of reassurance there from an older woman. And what Mary Jo had said, like everybody else, was that, all is energy. And of course, I teach about how all is energy. So I understood that part. But she said, so Cortney, you're exchanging your energy. You're giving of yourself, you're giving of this, you're giving of that, you're giving. So what are you receiving then? If it is and she said, for us, it is that dollar value. It is that monetary value of being able to put a price tag on it. And I think then I still sat with it. And I believe, if I remember correctly, I talked to the Akashic. And to tell you the truth, the Akashic still wants me to raise my prices. I have in increments over time. And it has nothing to do with my knowing my worth. It's not that, it's more the economic climate that we're all in. But I do think that a lot of readers, practitioners, those in the spiritual community, they go from either doing donations or free to kind of hone their gifts, which is good, but then into lowballing themselves because we, for some reason, still feel the taboo attached to it. And the taboo tells us, oh, no, 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 keep it at a low price until you hit this ultimate, marketing reader genius out there. You have to kind of keep lowballing yourself. And so I think it's a process that all workers in this environment kind of go through. And I'm sure many can resonate with that of even when other people we give them a reading of some sort and they go, oh, this is so valuable. And we're happy when people tip, but we tend to still lowball ourselves, which is fine for a while until a while is no longer suitable for us.
I can definitely relate to that aspect. So I'm sure any other spiritual readers and those in this kind of work can relate to that. I know that for me personally, I was doing $1 a minute and that felt a lot, right? And even though I knew I was way, way lowballing it, that was like how I was able to comprehend it. And then it, like, exactly like you said, over time, I was able to get a little braver. Okay, I'm going to raise it up. I'm going to raise it up. And technically my prices now, like yours, are still low, but I'm okay with that right now because I want to be available to everybody.
Yeah, that's
So
exactly what happens, is that we want to be able to serve everyone. It's that genuine heart. And still, I'm like, well, those who need Akashic readings probably can't afford the $150 Akashic readings. So what's a happy medium, right? Because that's the running amount for an Akashic reading, when really that's with the Akashic, it's kind of tricky too. I mean, it's not everybody out there who thinks they're Akashic readers are actually Akashic record readers. So it is that heart that goes into it. And so we slowly have to increment ourselves to a place that we feel comfortable, and the customer, the client, what have you, others feel comfortable.
yeah, 100%. And I know eventually mine will go up too, but I think that again, it's just like I want to be available. Yeah, it's that balance of I know I'm worth more, like charging more, but I want to still be available. So
Yeah, yeah.
so for those that are listening, they probably are like, what the heck is the Akashic Records? I've never heard of that, And it's such an abstract concept anyway, for those that maybe do sort of understand it. Can you share what it is and how it's beneficial?
And how it's beneficial, yes. Well, the term Akashic Records was actually coined by Edgar Casey, who was known as the sleeping prophet around the turn of the 19th century during the spiritualism movement, which he was not a part of, but he was a brilliant and wonderful man. He was able to access what is now referred to as the Akashic Records. Many people out there are going to reference it as some kind of like database that has all the information for past, present, and future that ever was and ever will be. I don't actually agree with that statement, because it it implies that everything is it's set in stone, and that could be furthest from the truth as to what the Akashic is. Nothing's set in stone, nothing's written in stone. You're writing your story every day. So for me and maybe a few others, we might refer to it as the waters of creation, or the 0 point of creation, or the realm of infinite potentialities, because that is what it is. It's infinite potentialities that at any time we can change our stories. Now, how people access it and what it looks like, I will tell you, it's changed for me over the years. Of course, when I first started practicing and diligently practicing, everyone that can access the Akashic need to have a very good foundation in meditation, which I did. I was taught meditation by the time I was 8 years old, and I started teaching meditation by the time I was 21. There does need to be an element of that. Edgar Casey was referred to as a sleeping prophet because he would go into this quote unquote sleep state. They didn't know it. He was just going into a deep meditative state. So when we talk about like infinite potential for all humans, people, places, and things, and that's what it really is. So can we draw from what happened in the past? Yes. Can we draw on what's going on now? Yes. Can we see projected futures as to the energy that we're living in currently? Yes. But at any time, humans are capable of changing everything up. So we can talk about, do you want to go further into the records? Because it's there's a lot that I can say.
Yeah, I definitely have more questions that we could like dive into. And I'm really glad that you feel that you're explaining that you do still believe in free will. You don't feel like it's set in stone. I have a friend who I don't know what her experience has been with the Akashic Records, but that was one thing she was kind of venting to me about. She's like, in the Akashic Records, I don't know if I believe in it because I don't believe that everything is set in stone and we all have this purpose and it's all and I didn't have enough information myself to really counter it or not. I know that wasn't my experience with you, but I do, because personally, just like you, I believe in projected futures. But like even when I do my readings, I prefer to work on the past and the present and how to get where you want to go versus like this is where you're headed, because I think it's all timelines. Like you said, to the potentiality, right? These are the potentials based on the decisions you make now, but your decisions will ultimately be what will lead you to which potentiality there is available, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And so Carl Jung kind of coined the idea that we actually don't have human free will. And I adore Carl Jung, I do, except for that. Because why he would say we don't necessarily have human free will is because we're making choices and decisions based on what in today's world would be referred to as like the programming or the options available, right? Because I can access the Akashic, I don't agree with that. And I had a professor in college who repeated the same phrase over and over again. And it took me years post college to understand what he meant by it. He would say, us humans, we're different than any other species on this planet. And what makes us so unique and wonderful is that we have the capacity to surprise ourselves. And what that means is that if we're turning right day in and day out, we're turning right, well, then we can wake up one day and go, I wonder what would happen if I turn left. And then we can turn left and see what happens. Other beings here don't have that. And also, I will say a lot of like galactic beings don't have that either. We are very unique in the way we operate. And so I do believe in human free will, especially when I know it's our choices that change the frequencies that we live in. And so at first, when I would access the Akashic, it was very how most people would represent it as this library, as you're getting the person's story. And I knew at the time that it was different for Edgar Casey, but I knew that I had to learn this way. And oftentimes when we're working with other celestial beings or other realms, they're going to present it in a way that's comfortable for you. And so I did. I spent years going to this quote unquote library, retrieving stories, all this symbolism. And I think it was a year ago, I had lost my voice, which goes in and out with me throughout my life. But last year, it was even more significant of a loss of voice. Edgar Casey also would experience the same thing. And in that, I can't work, I can't do anything. Okay, I'm taking a week of silence or however long it was, accessing the Akashic and understanding how to access it and how to retrieve things was very different than the prior years that I had worked. It is frequency. So what a lot of what people don't know, which is always fun to tell them when they get a reading, is I have them state their full legal name because our names and our voice is attached to our frequencies. So really what I'm doing is I'm accessing this realm of infinite potentiality, these waters of creation, the zero. Imagine me standing in the 0 point of creation and saying, hey, give me the frequency of, and I say it much nicer, but give me the frequency of so-and-so, and your name and your voice are attached to that frequency. It's attached to the energy within you and around you, right? In our little spheres. So a lot of people might not know that, but that is often how we identify ourselves as far as energy beings. So it is kind of important. And this is also just a little footnote. You ever met somebody that they're decent person, good person, they're fine. You have no real judgment thoughts or anything discerning thoughts about them, but their voice just kind of jars you? All that represents is that your frequency is not aligned with their frequency. And so they're not for you. Doesn't make them bad. They're just not for you. And so it's one of those key things that we can, in our waking life, kind of notice. I do want to say in respect to those who might seek to understand the Akashic and maybe access the Akashic, many times what I know from speaking with others and witnessing others is that they're not actually in the Akashic working. They're in the astral plane working. And the astral is definitely not the Akashic. the ancient, there's only small pockets of people in today's world that understand this. But the ancient tribes of across the world knew it as the hell plane, really. The astral tries to trick you. It really just wants to trap your consciousness there, which I also know many people that are pretty much trapped in the astral. Because it's fun and it's inviting and they don't know exactly what they're doing or what's going on. The only person I know now who's kind of exposing it again is, but it was always known. And to give a little piece of backup to let's be conscious of where we're going, and there's a lot of skills you can develop, is think of the American natives who would, when pictures came out and it had that brown tint to it, they would say, "Oh my goodness, you're going to steal our souls." It's because not the Akashic, but the astral plane would have either a brown tint or a blue tint or a gray tint. The Akashic does not have that. And so the natives, when these pictures started happening and they saw that brown tint, I can't remember the name of it actually, they automatically thought that camera is going to steal our soul because it looked like what their shaman would say is the astral. And so that I do want to make clear because many people, even unfortunately, there's readers out there who believe they're getting information from the Akashic and it's not the Akashic, it's the astral plane. So this is not in judgment, it's just in giving, it's in spreading awareness to things. And so the one thing that I can also say is the Akashic will always feel of a great presence of love and light. And so when we're not sure about things, we need to, in our waking life, know of our internal frequency and energy, our vibes, as people say, to then when we're somewhere else in a meditation, hand to heart and say, okay, how does this feel? Because if your inner energy is saying, I don't know, this doesn't feel like the magnitude of love and light, well, then I would retreat. That's all I suggest there. That was a lot, huh?
I was just soaking it all in. You know, so I find that really interesting about how you're saying some readers don't actually reach the Akashic, but they're more in the astral. How, so is there, so I know that you talked about the tint in the astral. So what does it look like in the Akashic as far as like the difference? If you, I don't know if you can explain the difference. I know you just said the feeling, which I think is important. If you know that you're in the presence of love and light, then you know that you're not in something that's not of love and light, right? So I do think
Right.
that I'm very, it's so funny. I love visual things with my eyes open, seeing beautiful things, but like with my eyes closed, I have such a hard time with visuals. It's just not where my gift is. It's more feelings or like random things I just know that I'm like, where'd that come from? But then I say it to the person and it makes perfect sense. So for me, it's just like it's like dropped in my head. But when I do the readings, I make it a point to like remove my ego and just be open because I don't need to figure out what's being said. I just need to be like that clear channel to share what I'm getting and let them do with it what they need to and just share whatever. And so for me, I always just feel like I think it's because I just hand it over and I know whatever it is higher power and I just trust it. But for those that go more into the visual, kind of like what you're explaining into the deep meditation where they're able to see and feel and kind of be there, what is the difference between the astral and the Akashic records, and how can they see the difference, or is it just a feeling?
Well, if they are gifted in traveling type of meditation, very visual meditations, and it does take time. I mean, I purposely learned about the Akashic and practice connecting with the Akashic for I mean, I think I told myself that I was going to do it 4 times a week for like a year. And I was. And I did connect with the quote unquote beings that help. And for a year or more, it was only receiving information for myself. And what was funny is they, like I said, originally it was this concept of a library. And for me, then it would look for over a year, I'm basically standing outside of this grand library, not being allowed to be, to come in. It's like these beings would kind of tell me outside of the library, we want you to go do this now. We want you to go do this. And some of it would seem like such oddball things. We want you to order pizza tonight for dinner. What? You know, but then come to find out, I order that pizza, and 2 days later, I'm talking to a neighbor and they ordered pizza too and never even bothered to tip the guy. I overly tipped that guy. Good thing, right? How was I supposed to know that? So what they were doing with me is they were stripping me of a lot of worldly concepts and also judgment, because there's absolutely no judgment inside of the Akashic. Now, do I in my waking life have some judgment? Yes. If you're driving like a crazy person down the road, I'm gonna probably judge you, because safety for all, right? In the Akashic, there's absolutely no judgment. That's why it's interesting, this concept of, the final judgment of things. There is none, right? It is what it is. But they were stripping me of a lot of that. And then I finally got to go into the library, and there was a lot of symbolism and a lot of things taught to me, and I was retrieving books, and sometimes people's guides would be there as well to communicate with, that kind of thing. And then now, like I said, last year when I lost my voice and a lot had happened in my transition of life, and really what it boiled down to was I had not completed my last phase of full self-acceptance. And that was key. I had to have my full self-acceptance of who I am. And so in that process, I started accessing it more so how Edgar Casey or some others would have accessed it, as in, I guess the best way I can explain it is kind of picture our Milky Way, kind of like what seems like a swirling ball of like pink, purple, starry beautifulness. I don't know how to, the Milky Way. Imagine going to like the center of that, and there's beings there, and you say, you know, I have to tell them first I'm a representative for you, and, retrieve your frequency. And then within that, your frequency shows up. It is a stream of, I would say, frequency consciousness, because consciousness is frequency and frequency is consciousness. So like your stream of frequency consciousness would present itself, and with that I am presented then with whatever images, words, what have you I need to give you that reading. And that's why I'm saying nothing is written in stone, because I will tell you, our history as we think we know it is vastly incorrect in many ways. So how is that quote unquote written in stone? Our futures are dictated by our choices. So how is that written in stone? So it's more all is energy. And I have found in my time, because I teach a lot about energy, that is actually probably one of the hardest things for people to grasp. And sometimes we need to just accept that for kind of what it is, even if we don't fully understand it, to move forward in spiritual development.
Yeah, I will say that the whole spiritual side of things is very abstract and can be difficult to fully understand from our human perspective, where things are so tangible. Like I can pick up and touch this and I know what this is, right?
Right.
But explain like the spiritual all's energy. Well, you can't see energy. We can feel it. I mean, most people, even those that aren't psychic, can feel energy shifts, even if they don't know what to call it. But it's not something that you can physically, actually see. So that is, I think hard for a lot of people to understand. But I think again, to a point, I think most of us feel it, even if we don't want
Yeah.
it. There's shifts when certain people walk in the room, you might get a certain like, whoa, I'm getting like a weird vibe from this person. Well, where is that coming from? Other than there's some kind of an energy entering with them, you know what I mean? They're exuding it. But yeah, that's fascinating. And so it sounds like it's really more about just knowing that you are in just as high, like the highest place you can be when you go to the Akashic Records. It's just being surrounded by that love and light and not expecting judgment. I guess that's another telltale, right? If there's judgment in there, it's probably not the Akashic Record.
Yeah, and it's sometimes always hard to explain in a way as to, how everything goes. But I think if we're trying to do vice versa of the astral and the Akashic, the astral, after a while, you'll have an inkling. You'll go, something didn't look right over there from the corner of my eye. Or, we talk about the faces maybe shift, or something will kind of entice you to go, that didn't feel or seem accurate or right. And then we have to start noticing what we're noticing more, right? With the astral, there isn't that game. There isn't that questioning. You can feel the difference of the energy. It's, and also the biggest thing too is that I think a lot of humans, we have a very low thought of ourselves as far as how much we control and have authority. And we have all the right in the world that even in 3D, 5D, wherever you are consciously or wherever you are traveling in your waking life, your meditative life, your dream state, we have the right and authority to, if something doesn't seem right, to ask it, who are you? What are you doing here? Right? So even if we accidentally travel to the astral, because that's usually how it happens in a dream or in that almost sleep state. Have you ever had, Sarah, like you're falling asleep, but then you start feeling like you're vibrating back and forth? Like there's a picture of a dream out here and you're whoop, whoop, back and forth like that. That tends to represent that you're entering into an astral plane. So we can just gain awareness. But even within that, let's say it kind of entices you and you do the whoop whoop and then you're there and things look enticing, entertaining. At some point, if something goes a little off, we have all the right and authority to ask, where am I? Who are you? That sort of thing, and then choose to return. Same with, let's say we see disembodied beings here or other parallel beings here, because some of us, a lot of, we're walking into the Great Awakening. And so people's abilities are going to be popping off left and right. And so we have to know that we do have the right to ask and inquire. And if things aren't right, then either we leave or we tell them to leave. It's, I think humans put themselves at such a low bar when we're actually not. We're such amazing beings that have the authority to protect ourselves and be mindful of things. Does that make sense? I'm trying to, I guess, put it into
Yeah.
perspective for folks.
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
Yeah, I think that worked, that you explained that very well. And I'm actually glad you mentioned that other piece of the basically boundaries is what you're speaking to, as far as like whether you're in the astral plane or here. And that goes for our physical people in our lives, or what you're referring to, entities, right? For those that are waking up and suddenly seeing ghosts walking around their house or non-human things. And oh my gosh, I'm so glad that that's not something that I've had to pick on yet, although I have been told by lots of people that I have a lot more gifts that I have not tapped into. So I'm a little like weary. But one thing I wanted to share was, ever since I've stepped into my spirituality and really this work that I've been on for the last 4 years now, since around the time I started my spiritual work, and then 3 years into my business, I'm no longer afraid of those things. I mean, if I actually see something, I might feel a little differently, because it's normally a feeling that I get of like, oh, something doesn't feel right. I feel like there could be something here that shouldn't be. And that's kind of like a icky feeling, It used to scare me. It used to be one of those things where I'd sleep with all my lights on, and, I'd want to be like under my covers. Even as a grown adult, if I feel like there's something there, I want to hide under my covers, like, and in the last 4 years, I'm not afraid of that anymore, because I understand it's a frequency thing. I understand that when you're in love and light, you're invisible basically to those things. And you can either speak it out loud or just inwardly acknowledge, like, I'm not here for this. I'm not afraid of you, because they feed off of the fear. And so for me now, if I ever get that feeling of being, which is not often anymore, but when I do get those like off feelings, for me, I call on Archangel Michael, and I just imagine him, surrounding me and everywhere in light and protection. And I can go back to sleep in the dark without any other fears. I know that whatever it is, it can't see me or touch me because I'm not inviting it in. And so, I mean, it could be different things, different tools that people can use, because it's not always going to be Archangel Michael. It could be a crystal, right? It could be, something that to you feels very protective. And when you pull it out, you feel like it's giving you what you need. But it's just, you're basically changing your frequency from, ooh, I think I must be in the lower frequency because I'm feeling something that's lower, and I don't want to be here. Am I explaining that right? Because that's been
Oh,
my
yeah. Yeah. And you're making me think. So I teach a lot about pyramids. I teach with working with pyramids, especially with my patrons. And so here's just a little tidbit for you and whoever's listening. It's great to sage the house. It's great to have crystals around, and I'm not opposed to any of that. I do think a lot of people need to learn more how, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, more not intense, but maybe, and I don't want to say appropriate either, but there's ways to sage that are just more powerful, as in removing things, right? But regardless of all that, let's say your house just isn't feeling right, your environment's just not feeling right. You can always sit, and you don't have to go into a deep meditation. It can just be a focused meditation, which is you're present, but you're imagining a pyramid over your house. Because we know now, especially because the Russians did all their beautiful science projects with it, that nothing negative can be in the sacred geometry of a pyramid. No, it will deflect, it will remove all negative energy. It is not capable of being inside of a pyramid. So a lot of my patrons have learned that, especially at different seasons or times, and it will all start ramping up even more so coming soon in the next couple of years, that if you picture like a glowing pyramid over your property, your home, your bedroom, your apartment, what have you, it will automatically, anything negative within will have to leave, and it'll protect you from anything negative coming into your space. So the reason I say this is because not everybody's actually trained in ways to sage the best for different things and different ways, and not everybody has that knowledge. And so to make sure that you're safe and sound, imagine a pyramid over you, and it will automatically work. I can guarantee you that, because it's not capable. There's absolutely no negativity capable of getting and penetrating through a pyramid.
I did not know that. That's fascinating. And it is simple too. It doesn't take a whole lot.
Right. Right. I mean, 3 minutes, sit on your couch for 3 minutes, close your eyes, and just picture a pyramid, and you are good.
So is it similar when you have an actual pyramid like decoration?
Yes, it's not up now because my office is full of stock for the event coming in April. But normally I have a pyramid up, a copper pyramid that I sit under. See, that's wonderful. Yes,
Ed, I
that's
have it.
lovely.
It was given to me too. It was a gift. And so I don't know. I just feel like it should be by my bed. I don't know why. A while now.
Pyramids are amazing for all forms of healing, growth, protection, manifesting. I do teach all this stuff on Patreon at Stars of Morning Light. They're, for me, over time of a lot of my studies and a lot of what I do, because I also study and teach from ancient texts, pyramids are hands down the thing that we all need to learn how to work with. And this is why we find them everywhere across the globe. They're everywhere. Because the ancient peoples knew the extent of the power of one in all forms of your thinking. I mean, manifesting, you can use pyramids. It's in April 7th, the patrons and I are getting together, and we're doing a huge meditation together that we are going to be using light streams out of the top of a pyramid and connecting them to cover the earth more in love and light. I've done similar things with other groups, as far as like the Rainbow Bridge or connecting in that way. I personally use pyramids. So and my teachers are down in Ecuador, and they are building the first pyramids, natural made pyramids to help people in their community. I was already on the pyramid, let's say, ship for a long time before they jumped on. I actually teach also the pyramid of self-ascension. So yeah, I can go on and on about pyramids as well.
That is so fascinating. I've definitely heard about the benefits. I just haven't like dived into it. So now I'm even more excited that I have one by my bed. With the work that you're doing, I mean, and obviously it's a lot of different projects you have going on and different, not just projects, but how do I say it? You have a lot going on. And do you feel like you found your purpose in the work that you do?
What's funny about that question for me per se is that, when I do Akashic readings for people, that is usually their question. What is my purpose? And the Akashic will always repeat the same thing at first every time, because all humans' purpose is to love and to love without limits, right? And so if you're doing that, groovy. You're doing a great job, right? And then we have to go into, individual purposes. Am I living my life purpose as of right now? Not to the full extent. I have a bachelor's in creative writing. I I used to have a literary agent and whatnot, and then life kind of turned vastly different, so I haven't gotten back to my writing. And I do feel that that is more of my avenue as to what Cortney McMahon would, or McMahon, however you want to pronounce it, would want to do. But as a teacher, as a healer, a spiritual community developer in that form, definitely. But for my personal value and journey of myself and what I would like to see myself do, no, I would like to get back to writing much more often. So am I discontent? No. Am I happy with the fact that I do most of my actions and thoughts and behaviors and what I teach and what I do is all based on love and the sharing of love? Yes, I'm very content with that. So it's, we're all in a journey, and we're all doing what we can do to contribute to society based on what our skills, talents, and gifts are. And right now, as I'm still moving along pretty well in my 40s, my skills, talents, and gifts are teaching in-person classes, teaching others how to do it, how to do many of things, Reiki, star consciousness, pyramids, all sorts of things, right? And then bringing people together in a community so everyone can thrive. And then later, I'll kick back and I'll start writing. So I think currently, am I on my right path? I'm on the path. Is it a completed picture? No, not at all. But am I discontent? Not at all, because I know I do it in love. And so I think having that kind of mindset might change my perceptions of purpose.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, I love it when people say they feel like they found their purpose, but I also feel like it's always evolving. It's always going to be evolving until the day we die, because that's part of being a human, is constantly growing and evolving. So that makes perfect sense. And not only that, but I think we have seasons of purposes
Hmm.
too. And I think the underlying purpose is, I love how you said that the answer is love first and foremost, because my definition of purpose, which is just, my own human concept, but my definition of purpose is, it's something that lights you up and it's something that gives back to the world. But that's the love piece, right? It's you love doing it, it makes you happy, but it's also, the love is, I want to share this with the world and make the world a better place. And that's all in love. Ultimately, like the very bottom, at the base of it, you know. But yeah, I do think it evolves. And I think that we have maybe like, I don't know, this is just my perception. I feel like it evolves, but I think there's like a common denominator that follows the evolution, that you're like, sounds like you really enjoy teaching.
I
And eventually
do.
it will likely turn into the form of a book. And that's another form of teaching. You're just meeting and reaching a bigger audience. And so I've actually seen that a lot with spiritual teachers who, when they're younger, they start off doing like one-on-one readings, and they branch out to like communities and build something a little bit bigger. And then they go from like doing these active readings to more of the teacher writing or speaking thing, where they're no longer necessarily like running the things, they're just now
Yes.
sharing information. It's so fascinating when I see
Yes.
the same, pattern that just tends to evolve with a lot of different spiritual, and not just spiritual, I think in expert fields too, you see that as well.
Well,
Yeah,
and
so
I
I
think for in a lot of ways, like even with New Earth Energy Market, that's not going to be, I'm not doing that forever as, running the whole show or getting it going, I shouldn't say. The tagline is teamwork to usher in the new earth. But I will eventually hand that all over to someone, which I'm perfectly fine with. I mean, that's how I do a lot of things. I get a lot of things going. They're doing great. Everything's taken care of, and then I'll hand it over to someone. And I think a lot of people who are also teachers in that way, am I a healer? Yes. Can I heal people? Yes, greatly. And I think great healers have had to heal greatly in their lives, which I have done. But there becomes a point that it's like, no, you want more people to be able to do this. You want people to be able to heal themselves and others and do this and gain the knowledge. So then you move into the teacher role. And then from the teacher role, at some point, as a teacher, you kind of evolve into more of that quiet master state. You really do, as far as I know who I am later in life. I teach that as well, and I help people introduce themselves to their future higher selves, right? And she is much quieter than me. Very, very quiet. And a lot of when I say that, everybody's like, huh, really? Much quieter because she has accomplished what she needed to accomplish. And now she is in that state of mind of the silence of a true teacher. So it's it's it is that evolution process. And I think those who are headed that way, it should always evolve with the idea of serving others.
yeah, no, 100%. And as you were describing this to me, I'm sure you are familiar with this. Are you familiar with the maiden mother crone?
Oh
Um,
yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
immediately what it makes me think of, like that process and evolution.
Yes. Yes.
And also, when you're speaking about how your older version of you is much quieter, I've experienced that too. I've done a few meditations where I've met my older self, and I'm always like in awe. I'm like, oh my gosh, like she's so graceful. And like she's graceful, but she doesn't really care what other people think, but she doesn't need to like spew her opinion everywhere. She just carries on. Yeah, I'm good.
It's great that you think that, or that you've seen yourself very graceful. I seem to wear a whole lot of flannel. So like like I'm just in flannels surrounded by dogs walking in the woods most of the time. And it's like, why am I wearing so many flannels in my older years? But apparently so I'm happy you said graceful. That sounds lovely. I think a lot of people should try to meet themselves and try to sign a contract with yourself. We hear about these things as soul contracts with others. Why don't we sign a contract with our older self to become them? If we like what we see, we like who they are, they're a good person, sign a contract with them and say, I'm going to do what I can to be you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was kind of doing in that meditation, is that's where I want to be. And when I say graceful, I'm actually referring to, so one of my biggest struggles is like I hate confrontation. I really hate using my voice. When I get triggered, I've come a long way, but sometimes I'm just like, not that I like react, but physically I'm like I'm getting triggered, even if I don't necessarily, the other person may not know, or maybe they do, but I don't like let it out. It's overcoming. And so when I say graceful, it's more like I handle things with grace. There is no like, things can't penetrate me that way anymore. And they
Mm,
don't, if someone were to try and trigger me, I would probably just smile and wish them a good day. Like it wouldn't even faze me. It'd be like, you know what, you need to smile today,
oh, that's a
kind of.
wonderful, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a wonderful evolution. That means if you saw her that way, your future self, that you have learned and healed greatly Definitely. You know, and I want to put out there because I've said probably 2 or 3 times now, to be in service of others. That is post great healing. Many people in this community jump into serving others or whatever work they do when it is still codependent behaviors and thought patterns. And we don't have to go into codependency. I wish more people would look up the definition of that and all of its characteristics. So it's unhealthy service. So service to others only comes after you've served yourself in healing and growth and change. So I guess I wanted to iterate that as well.
Yeah, I'm really glad you did because I do think that there is still this toxic idea of I need to save the world and then I can save me. And it's totally the other way around. And that's been my experience when you said that you've obviously done a lot of healing. I really have. Like, there are certain people that used to really, really trigger me. And now I feel like I could run into them and handle it completely different than I would have 2 years ago. It's just, I've really come to this place, and granted, I still have a ways to go. I'm not, you know what I mean? The healing is ongoing, but I have definitely seen the evolution from like 2 years ago, a year ago to now. And part of that was learning to put myself first, was learning to take care of myself, was learning that in order to take care of others the way I want to, I have to start here. And not only that, but in my readings, I cannot tell you how often self-care comes up. It's probably like 9 times out of 10, if not, maybe a little less, but it's very, very often that self-care comes up in that form of you need to take care of yourself first. And I don't know if you've heard the saying, but you teach what you most need to learn. So I feel like that's been on repetition for me and them. It's a constant reminder for myself as well. But yeah, you can't show up. The analogy I love to use is you can't give from an empty cup. And
Right.
you have your cup overflowing. So you have enough to give, but you're taken care of as well.
Right. Right. And to know ourselves, to know our motives to things. We can even say that we can think that we're doing a bunch of self-care and we're balancing things, but we also need to know the motives as to why we do what we do. That's where it gets even more confusing, because we want to be of love and light when there might be a whole lot of self-serving in other ways that is present. So it's an evolution, as you said, Sarah. It's an evolution. It's not a overnight thing. And people go from one thing to another thing to another thing, and the best thing that we can do is stay inside of something for long enough to know why we were brought to it in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because otherwise you can get caught up in like maybe you're doing things just for the validation for yourself, just
Right.
to feel like you're being, because I think there are a lot of wounded people who tried to show up in the teacher roles, but it's not really in the right place. It's more trying to fill up a void that they have. And it's like, that's not, just as an example, that's not healthy. Again, it comes from love. You have to have a desire to go inward and heal that. So that way that's not your inner component. You're doing it because you want to help others, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So from here, I'd love to shift to what I like to call synchronicity story time. And I'm sure you have a ton of synchronicity stories in the work that you do. Do you have anything either, with any of the other things you do or in the Akashic Records, any cool stories that you were like able to pinpoint or have evidential proof of something or anything cool like that?
So I actually, my husband's home from work today, and I came home from taking the dog out, and I said, husband, there's going to be this question about synchronicities or maybe, supernatural stuff or what have you. And I said, I don't know if that question applies to me because I've been a psychic my whole life. What degree do I see things as synchronicities when, that propel my life or influence my life? I said, I have no idea. Sometimes I do have to bounce things off of someone because I'm, you know, and he said, no, Courtney, you're thinking too much. And I said, okay. And he said, no, once again, then we started talking about Carl Jung, who actually really introduced the idea of synchronicities from a psychic that he worked with for a long time. That's a footnote for everyone. And I said, the only thing that I'm thinking about this morning is, and I'll relay the story. So, this new earth energy market, when this first started, it was actually between myself and two other people. And it came about as this idea of, we have to create something that's affordable for us and, good for everyone. And it's about natural products, about good energy, good vibes, that kind of thing. Well, in discussion, it came into that I would find the location, which I did. But then I told everybody, hey, I'm going to be having a hysterectomy. So while I'm recovering, find people that can work at booths. Well, by the time I got done with recovering, I contacted the said two other people, and no, not only did they not do anything, they were not even going to participate in any way, shape, or form anymore. I had 3 months to either end it or keep going. So the day that I had that last conversation with one of them, of course I was upset because now this has fallen onto my plate. I don't know, should I stay or should I go? Do I keep it? Do I throw it away? All of those. Right. And I was kind of doing venting to spirit moments. What am I supposed to do here? I had 7 people booked for a booth, and that was all I knew. That was the only people I knew. So I was venting to spirit and saying all this stuff. And at some point I said, show me what I need, what needs to happen. And I kind of like was turning a corner, probably carrying laundry upstairs or something. And belly dancers flashed before my eyes. And I went, belly dancers, Spirit, what am I supposed to do with belly dancers? And who's got time to find belly dancers in Northwest Georgia, Chattanooga, Tennessee? Like, that is not the point of what we're doing here, Spirit. But okay. And then it flashed before my eyes again, and Spirit said, belly dancers will be in your future. And I went, I didn't ask you about my future. I asked you about this event. And so I just kept pushing along, kept going out there, hitting the ground running, good old 90s style as we used to do when I was young, of walking into places. Hey, you want to do this? And it came together. The first time was rough. I will say that. The first time was rough to get something like this going in this area. It's the only thing in this area, really. We're very unique because the surrounding areas are very rural. And I will tell you, about the week before this event happened, and I never looked into belly dancers. I think I put it out to some people, but the week before the event was actually going to happen, I was getting pizza because it was one of those nights of, I'm not going to do anything ever. Like, I'm just shutting down my entire existence tonight type thing. And I'm standing there waiting for pizza, and I get a DM, and I kid you not, it's from a belly dancer. Her name is Jamie Gray with Blue Sun Fusion Studio. She starts DMing me, and I look her up, and I'm just like, I didn't know do I be overzealous and like, oh my God, a belly dancer? I just told her I wanted to find belly dancers. I didn't sound like too much of a weirdo. And through just that DM of that night of me stressed out completely and just ready to collapse, she through that, just those DMs, I could tell I like this lady. I like her style. I like how she's communicating. Well, then I met her at that event. She is now, quote unquote, a business partner of mine. An old school, shaking hands. We show up for each other in integrity, right? And a dear, dear person in my life. And I've also learned some belly dancing myself. I have more belly dance information now in me ever in life. And there's been belly dancers at every event we have, leading into cultural events as well. I had no clue belly dancing was ever going to be a thing for me, or ever be even in this area that I would meet someone that's a belly dancer, let alone the relationship I have with Jamie Gray now, who is a superb belly dance instructor, been doing it over 10 years. And her studio is the one location that I teach my in-person classes out of because her energy and my energy just work so well together. I would have never known that. And so it's hard to say synchronicity. It's hard to say this. It's hard to say that. But things like that do happen for people. Kind of like when I mentioned the Akashic said, as they were stripping me of all these thought patterns I have, they said, "We want you to order pizza tonight." Why would I have ever thought that that was going to be so I can give that guy extra on his tip because somebody 3 doors down didn't? Why would I ever know that? I would never have known that that was going to be the case. I would have never have known that the Friday before this event, a belly dancer was going to contact me. And she and I have been rolling together ever since. So I think sometimes things are presented in ways, even through conversations like this. If we remain open to sights, sounds, energies, then sometimes we just have to let them lead.
Oh my gosh, no, that's such a cool story because synchronicity is really just following the breadcrumb. And for you, you got the download. You didn't really know what to do with it, but it was almost, it sounded like it was kind of a confirmation to continue with it, with the event. So it was kind of like, well, I guess I'll continue. I don't know what the belly dancing thing is about, but I'll continue. And then it all came into place. I think that that's what a synchronicity is. It's when you follow the breadcrumbs and you do something with it, and then in hindsight you can kind of see like how it all came together. So that is such a cool story, and I think everyone can relate. I'm sure every listener has had something like that where things just fell into place so perfectly that it couldn't have happened any other way.
Yeah, yeah. And it might be, I think the thing too is sometimes we tend to, we want something so wholeheartedly that we're projecting what we want. And then we go, oh, that's the synchronicity. Oh, that's what it is. And that's why I say, like, stay open-minded because when they said belly dancers, that was furthest from my mind completely, right? Or presented belly dancers to me. It was a holistic fair. Seriously, it was a holistic healing, crystals, sound baths, that kind of fair. Why would I have ever thought belly dancers? But now joining with the belly dance community and that has brought in bands for our cultural fairs that has brought in so much richness that I would have never have not on my own. And I think that's what we often have to be open to is that not on our own and we follow this stuff or we just even if we don't know about it, we just put it on the back burner and we when it presents itself again, okay, there it is. Jump on it.
Yeah, it's that bit of surrender out here. You're not controlling the show. We think we are, but we're not. And when we're able to surrender and just kind of like, okay, well, I hear you. I don't know what that means. I'm just gonna set it aside and see if it comes back around. And then, at least because I think most people are sleepwalking. So when signs like that are given to them, it's just like they miss it. And so that's why I like talking about synchronicity stories because I want to help people put that more in their mind, and bring it more to their awareness so they know that there are signs. The universe is always leaving us breadcrumbs. It's just, are we listening and are we looking and are we paying attention?
Yeah. My teachers always, gosh, I must have listened to them for 2 years repeating the same phrase until it finally clicked. And they would always say, notice what you're noticing. And when it finally clicked, a whole lot kind of opened up as to the universe trying to work with us opposed to against us. And, I used to tell my students, work with the energy, not against the energy, right? Work with each other, not against each other. Work with me, not against me, right? And then when they added the notice what you're noticing, it opened up a whole lot of things as to seeing things differently.
Yeah, I love that. I'd like to ask my final question, which I feel like I already know the answer, what you're going to say, because I think we've touched on it already, but this is kind of my ending question, and maybe you could talk and speak more to it. But do you believe that everyone has a purpose?
Yes. Okay, so this might be a little controversial how I'm going to answer this, but it's because I do understand all is energy. And so does everyone, every human, every being, every sentient and every non-sentient being have a purpose? Yes. And I even talk on my channel, even the bad mama jammas. We're in the world that wants to talk about the bad guys so much. They serve a purpose as well. We all serve a purpose. So one is not better than the other. One is not higher than the other. One is not grander than the other. There's a whole system at place of how we operate with one another and the cosmos and the Akashic and all areas. And so everyone does. And I think when we limit others by saying that they don't have a purpose, we're really also limiting ourselves to the extent of our infinite potentialities. So everyone has some form of purpose. And I'm sure those that listen to your show, your podcast, they have a brilliant purpose. It's lovely. And a lot of us we live in a world of egos. And there is a way to kind of cleanse your ego and keep it right size so your ego's not driving the car. But we live in a world where it's egos talking to egos talking to egos, right? And even our own ego, when we come up with a purpose or we think of purpose for ourselves, we tend to make it very grandiose. When grandiose accomplishes really nothing. It's those small, intimate moments on one with healing and conversation and coming to an understanding with one another that actually shape and change the world. So it's always sad when I have conversations with people and they want something bigger than that. And it's not because they're not deserving. They are as big and profound as they want to be. They just don't see themselves as that because it's done in all these beautiful little moments, these little sequences that are life. And so it's very disheartening to me when I tend to have the conversation of you are beautiful and grand and just as profound as anything else because of all those little beautiful things that you do. So it's that was probably a big mouthful to answer the question as to yes, everyone does, but they tend to seek this huge thing when huge things they ignite, they're beautiful, they're a big firecracker, and then they're gone. It's all the little things that make life life, and that's how we contribute. So I guess I'm just trying to support everybody thinking of themselves in a more harmonious way with all of creation.
I love the directions that you took with that because it was a little different than what I've heard before. And so, like, first of all, when you're talking about everyone has a purpose, even the villains of our story, right? I love that because it actually reminds me. Are you familiar with Neil Donald Walsh? He does the book Conversations with God.
Oh, yes.
And
Yes, yes, yes,
he
yes.
I've not read his books. I want to, but I've heard him on podcast interviews. And he has a child's book. I think it's called The Little Soul in the Sun, but it's this idea and I love it. It's a little controversial and it's a little hard to wrap your mind around, but it resonates so much. It's basically this it's a kid's book. It's these little souls up in like heaven or, whatever. And then the sun is God or source, right? And this one little soul goes up to the sun and says, I want to experience this thing called forgiveness. And the son says, well, in order to experience this thing called forgiveness, another soul has to choose to dim their light down enough to do this thing to you that will hurt you. So then you can experience this thing called forgiveness. And another soul came up to that soul and said, I love you so much. I'm willing to dim my light to do this thing so you can experience forgiveness, but promise you won't forget who I am and come back for me and remind me who I am. And so I know it's such a heavy, powerful idealism, right? But it's just, I love it because it almost brings in those villains. They have a purpose more than, yes, in a lot of ways, they help you find yourself. They help you find what you want in your life, what you don't, and who you are versus who they thought you were. There's a lot of internal growth that happens for you too. But did they come? Was there a soul contract there? Did they come to help you experience that? Now, how can you know what I mean? And obviously, that's a little heavy because what if it's an abuser and all this other stuff? But I think it just opens the door to compassion, even if they're not in your life, this understanding of what was your role in my life and and then wishing them the best and still finding their purpose and finding not just the role that they played in your life, but finding their own purpose as well as it's like waking up and finding themselves, because you know what I mean? It's that both and compassion thing. I don't know if that makes sense. I always have a hard time with it to a point, because when I think of like abusers and those awful situations, I don't want to like be okay with what those people are doing, but also understanding that there's a role that they're playing and that purpose was, there was a purpose to it.
It's a hard pill to swallow, and in all various ways. I mean, I don't want to get too far out there, but think of how much people on the internet talk about the bad reptilians and stuff like that, or the bad this and the bad that. Everything in creation was made for a reason. So, and that we limit ourselves to thinking of just the earthly plane. Creation is creation. That means everything.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic, but yeah, that's a whole other thing to consider as well. But yeah, I loved your answer of purpose, and I'm just so glad that you were able to join me today and
This was fun.
Yeah, it's such a great conversation. Where can our listeners find you if they want to work with you more?
I would go to Stars of the Morning Light on YouTube, or definitely consider joining us on Patreon. We are a lovely community. There's a $5, $8 tier. That is for those who can only afford $5. The others that can afford $8 make up the difference. And then there's a $30 tier, which I think has another 1 or 2 slots available, but that gets you an Akashic reading every month. And you get 2 classes a month, and the group also decided to start meditating together with each other on Sunday mornings for manifesting purposes. So it is a very lovely community there. So definitely YouTube at Stars of Morning Light, Patreon. And if you want to connect with me, starsofmorninglight@gmail.com, because I have like my moon manifesting course that you definitely can buy online. It is 8 videos, 8 instructional videos, and a 25-page PDF that I go into moon stuff that many people, you're not going to find it anywhere else. I can guarantee you that. It's 25 years experience from me working with the moon that I've gained a lot of knowledge. So start there. I would start there. And if you are in the Chattanooga, Tennessee, Northwest Georgia, I do all my in-person classes out of Blue Sun Fusion Studio in Dalton, Georgia. And you'll find me around. Look up New Earth Energy Market. I am on Instagram and Facebook as SML, and or Stars of the Morning Light. So I guess start with YouTube. That's your best bet, is start with my YouTube channel at Stars of the Morning Light. That's where I would go.
Perfect. And I'll be sure to put that in the show notes so they can find you easier and quicker. And yeah, today has been such a great conversation. Thank you. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, this has been a blast. Thank you, Sarah. It's so good to see you as well.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you're wanting more, consider joining our free Facebook community called Spirit Journey Collective, your haven for spiritual exploration and personal growth. Dive into a supportive community where sharing spiritual experiences is encouraged. Unlock the power of intuition, embark on a journey of self-discovery, and connect with like-minded souls. If this sounds like a community you'd love to plug into, the link is in the show notes below. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.